This is Priscilla Kalugden. I am the Capital Corridor Marketing Communications Manager, and I want to welcome you all to the Annual Business Plan Update Public Workshop. And we have a short slide presentation to go through with you today that will cover the highlights for our annual business plan draft. And really, mostly this session is designed to entertain your questions and answers and comments about the service. So with that, I'm going to move along, get started. Let's see. For today's event, all of the participant cameras will be turned off and participants will be muted by default. We are recording this workshop so that we can make it available online on YouTube afterwards. And as we mentioned, we welcome your questions and comments and would love for you to use the Q&A feature in Zoom to submit the questions. If you are having some technical troubles or just have some kind of another question that is not an official question about the plan, please use the chat feature to message our chat assistant who will help with answering any of your questions there. And we will be answering most of the questions at the conclusion of the presentation, but some of the panelists may want to answer some of the questions as they come up. We will keep an eye on them as we go along, so thank you. An overview of the annual business plan process. We released the draft to the public for review on our website on January 19th. And this week we are doing our public workshops. We've done a few on board the trains, which was always a delight for us to meet our passengers. And we're doing a couple of them here virtually. We do invite comments, as we mentioned, on this, but there's a deadline that will be February 2nd, 2024. The final draft, when we submit it to our board in April, will include all of the public comments as well as CCJPA's staff responses about your questions. So this is a really important document for people to see, for our board to see, and really understand what questions are coming from our writers. And with that, I'm going to introduce our Managing Director, Rob Paget, to begin covering the rest of the business plan highlights.
Thanks, Priscilla, and thanks to those of you who are able to join us today. I'm Rob Paget, the Managing Director of Capital Corridor, and just to say, the thing we want to do the most today is give you a good sense of where we're headed, but hear from you. So the biggest plus side I see, I think my team sees, is that we hear lots of great ideas from our customers over the years. Some of those ideas have really helped steer the direction of the organization, the emphasis of our time. So we really do encourage the questions. We like feedback on good stuff that we're doing and maybe stuff we can do better. Please don't hesitate. Just this first slide here real quick. This just shows you what's included in our business plan. And this is a requirement of the state that it include all these sections. We're not going to go into a lot of detail on some of these, but if you do have an opportunity to go online and read it, you'll see that this is how it's organized. And we'll clip a lot of these today as we go through our slide deck. Next slide, please. So I know a lot of you are interested in how we're doing as we recover from the pandemic, the impacts of the pandemic, which really changed the way a lot of us travel, a lot of us commute, a lot of us in terms of personal trips. We're back close to 1 million riders a year this past fiscal year. We peaked at about 1.8 million prior to the pandemic. And we have revenue in this past year of $23 million. That compares to about $37 million a few years ago. Our on-time performance is at 82%. The goal of the agency is 90%. A lot of what we've had this year in terms of delays has been related to vehicles on the tracks and other trespasser incidents along the corridor. That has contributed to 10% of that reduction in on-time performance. And then in terms of the percentage of fares, percentage of our operating costs that we cover through fares. That was at 38% in FY23. And I'm going to talk about a fare study we're doing this year. And it's important to look at the statistic. We're expected by the state to recover about 50% of our operating costs through fares, and we're below that today. We're going to get back to a better place by growing ridership and maybe through a change in fares, but we'll come back to that. Next slide. This just gives you a sense of where we are on ridership. It's a monthly ridership number. And we have a seasonal variation. Our busiest time of year is usually October among all the months. But if you look, kind of compare, say, December of this past year to December of 2022, you can see we have a real steady growth in ridership year over year, well over 10% this past year. So although we're down from where we were a few years ago, there's no doubt that the demand is there, and we're seeing lots of customers return to the service. Next slide. And this is gives you a summary of what we're assuming in terms of ridership growth for 24 and 25. We have to make some assumptions about what we expect in ridership so that we can understand the revenue that we'll generate from that ridership and make sure we can develop a budget that works. And this is giving you a range of where we expect things to go. We're presuming a little bit slower growth. We're trying to be real conservative in what we assume for ridership growth year over year. Next slide, please. And then in terms of schedule, I know there's a lot of interest in this, and I saw the note from Mike Birnbaum online about what we're assuming for when we go back to full service. So our current plan is to go back to full service on October 1st of 2024. That is so when we're talking about our business plan today, the business plan that we are covering today is fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26. Fiscal year 25 starts on October 1st, 2024. And the presumption we are making for the purposes of budgeting and the request to the state for funding is that we do go back to full service on weekdays beginning in October of this year. We're already back at full service on weekends. Next slide. And in terms of what is going to let us do that, so the things that are restricting us now from going back to full service is equipment availability. So we made a decision early in the pandemic to give up some cars in California that were close to the end of life. And that was a really good financial decision that in part has helped us maintain our financial viability through this period. But it means that at this point, we're waiting for new equipment, and there is some new equipment that's being manufactured and delivered from Siemens here in California called Venture cars. Those are single level cars. Those will be delivered out to the San Joaquin Valley. So it will support the San Joaquin service. And as those come online, some of the bi-level equipment, the two-floor equipment, will be able to be shifted to our service and a service in Southern California. So right now, equipment availability limits us to any ability to expand our current service levels. But that Venture car equipment is now in service. So you may have seen that with the San Joaquins. There is at least one set in service. I believe a second one is, if not already in service, is very close. The other thing to mention is, and I know you're feeling it if you're a bike rider, especially on some of our busier trains like 538, we are starting to see issues with bike capacity on trains. We're aware of it. Bringing more equipment on, letting us run longer train sets, maybe adding a car or two to a train set, is going to also help with our bike capacity, which we know is a big deal for many of you. And then budget and funding resources. We have to have enough money to run the service. Part of what we do in this business plan is we provide documentation to the state, to the California State Transportation Agency on our funding needs so that they understand what we're trying to accomplish this year. And that is going to be a big factor in whether we can go back to full service on October 1st. Next slide, please. And then in terms of rolling stock equipment, I know a lot of you have asked questions to our team about this. We did make a full transition this year to renewable diesel fuel. And that has helped reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So although we are diesel, and we do intend to eventually transition to a zero emission fleet, this is a really big move that has helped in the interim reduce our greenhouse gas contribution here by Capital Corridor. And then the other thing that we've started this year is a truck overhaul. And a truck is a term used for basically for the suspension of the train. So if you ride the train and you feel jostled around, that is usually not the tracks. It's usually the trucks of the car that you're on. And we will be replacing the trucks of all of our fleet. We're doing them 2 at a time. That work's being done here in California, out in Stockton. And you will start to feel that as those cars are brought on the service. The other important thing we're doing this year is we're transitioning to a new equipment maintainer. The company's name is Tazi. We've historically had Amtrak as our equipment maintainer. The new equipment maintainer is a third-party contractor, and that will they're all part of the same railroad unions. That new maintainer will have local management, and we think we'll be able to respond to the unique nature of our equipment here in California. And we think we'll have a real positive impact on our reliability. And with that, I think I'm turning it over to, can you go to the next slide, please? To Jim Allison, who will take it from this point forward. Thanks, Jim.
All right. Everybody hearing me okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the capital items and some of the projects that we have underway. Rob mentioned some of the delays that kind of plague our service, which are associated with the right-of-way. So we're really trying to clean up the right-of-way, reduce the trespasser incidents, and introduce some Union Pacific agents who can kind of police what's appropriate for being in the right-of-way. And tents and other things that we're seeing are certainly not. So those do lead to a lot of our delays that Rob mentioned. The other outreach that we have is just to make sure that safety is very important for those who are crossing the tracks and those who are in proximity to the tracks, like any schools. And so we continue to be involved in the California Operation Lifesaver outreach. And we're working on the station cleanups and the right-of-way cleanups. That's the other thing I talked about. The other important thing is about station safety and security, at sense of security at a station. And we work with local law enforcement to hopefully improve upon that. It's a very challenging situation. So feel free, to talk with others and talk with us on the train, or send in comments if you feel the need to have increased safety and security at any of the stations we have. Next slide, please. Okay. We have a number of projects that are not going to be projects that you really get out and see and celebrate, but you'll feel them in terms of improving the service reliability. And this is a signal replacement, which should add to greater reliability around Stige, which is kind of in the Berkeley area, north of Berkeley. And then the Agnew siding is another project down in near Levi Stadium, which is a very important siding project that we're working on to reduce any of those waiting holds, because we already are single track there. So we'll create a siding, and it will also allow us to store special event trains that are associated with Levi Stadium events. So ourselves and ACE have been serving those events, not only concerts that you may have heard of and sporting events, but other events as they come along. So we're very keen to have the Agnew siding advanced. It will be still a couple years out, but the project is underway in terms of relocating utilities that are underneath the siding. And then finally, there's a picture of Davis here. Davis is being looked at for some disability improvements and access improvements. And they're currently working on the interlocking and signal systems that's sort of on the eastern edge of the Davis station in preparation for a future remodel. And maybe we'll talk about that in a few slides. Next slide, please. This is a very exciting program for Capital Corridor. It's called Tap to Ride. It's part of the California Integrated Travel Project. We launched a pilot Tap to Ride program in March of 2023. It required, thank you, Anne Marie, there's a link there to learn more about it. Tap to Ride is a program to shift away from the current ticketing process to contactless payment. Right now, because we're in a trial basis, it's only available to credit cards, but in the future, we would lean to smartphones, smartwatches, et cetera, and credit cards that have the Tap to Ride symbol on it. We are currently registering people that are interested in participating in this, and the fares are at a discount rate because you're part of a experiment, really learning. And we've learned so much since 2023, since the expansion rolled along. We are now outfitting more of the cars than we had originally. We just did the cab cars initially, but now we're going to roll out the equipment into all the cars, and then at some point in time open up registration and take other steps to learn more about how to work with the system. So if you're interested, please follow those links there, and you can sign up for the pilot, which will be expanding in a couple months. Next slide, please. Okay, Rob mentioned on the fare policies. We do need to maintain our relationship with the state at a sort of aiming for that 50% fare box recovery. We held our fares stable through the pandemic, and we didn't change our single ride fares since 2013. So inflation has caught up to us all on many things, and we are not unlike that. And right now, what we're trying to do is look at, given the change in ridership with the COVID and how people are using our service, both for recreation, leisure trips, as a maybe greater percentage than they used to in the past with work trips. We're working on a fare study to find a right balance point for that. And we expect to roll into that maybe in late 2024. It's likely the multi-ride pricing will be a little bit, get more of the increase than the single ride pricing, but it is being evaluated in its totality. And then Tap to Ride is another opportunity, and will probably remain on a day-to-day basis. Probably the best deal moving ahead will be through Tap to Ride, because the costs through that system are a bit less from us. But we'll make information available to the public as we try to make these adjustments, and also deal with rising bus costs for those of you who connect into San Francisco. Next slide. I'll talk a little bit about the service amenities. These are sort of a mixture of technology projects plus just good old food service and accessibility. We are updating our passenger information display system. It's being modernized right now. We have more or less done the back end of it. The software that runs the servers and things like that in the background. And then we'll start working on the hardware upgrades, which are the actual signs and the audio that goes along with those announcements. But in the background, we're very excited to have the GTFS real-time feed. That's the GTFS is a standard that's used in the transit industry to communicate where vehicles are. And we have that real-time feed available for third-party app developers to use. It's available on the Transit 511, which is the Bay Area portal, but it's also available through Google Transit and other things like that. I'll shift into the Wi-Fi entertainment space. We've had Wi-Fi since 2011 on the train, and we upgraded it roughly in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. So it's faster than it ever has been before. and we're continually looking to improve the technology on it. It works better when there's less riders using it. And so as we're not as dense with ridership, the performance is even better right now, but we are going to be upgrading to 5G modems in the years ahead. So trying to keep pace with the demand. The other interesting feature that we previewed last year was including full-length movies, and that we've expanded that in terms of having free movie titles, and some examples are there. Food service has been looked at over the years in terms of trying to provide good, a diverse selection of options. And we've been, I think, pretty successful at adding some seasonal special and different new items, but we do have to keep track with those price increases as well. We're very happy though, since the pandemic is behind us, hopefully, the Cappy Hour is back, where we have kind of a celebration of our riders that ride with us quite a lot, to have discounted drinks and free snacks during these peak times. Finally, I talked a little bit about ADA accessibility, or Disability Americans with Disability Act accessibility improvements. Davis is on a longer path for those improvements, but you will have seen smaller improvements, such as striping at Fremont, Hayward, Oakland, Coliseum, and Martinez stations. So those major improvements I talked about, Emeryville, Richmond, Sassoon, Fairfield, and Davis are at an especially higher level. The Sassoon, Fairfield, and Davis ones will revamp how the stations are used with the center island platform as opposed to side platforms, but those are more longer term. So we're always trying to improve the safety and work with our city partners and Union Pacific and Amtrak to improve that. The next slide. Okay, finally, in terms of service enhancement, these are the planning section areas, which is the area that I mainly work in. We have had our long-term goal of getting more service up to Roseville, and the Sacramento to Roseville project's been in place, and we finally got the full funding that we needed for implementing phase one. Phase one will take the service from 1 round trip to 2 round trips. It will take a while till 2029 before that's available, but we are diligently working on that project all the time. Our engineering lead person is very busy with the project right now, setting up all the final design and dealing with utilities that are in the right of way. We're also working on South Bay Connect. That's in the planning shop right now, getting out an environmental impact report in this coming year. And this is basically a shift to the coast subdivision, which is, like the name sounds, closer to the coast, closer to the bay, which will eliminate some of the travel time and the curves that we serve at Fremont that take us away on Hayward and Fremont, and then we'll put a new station in at Ardenwood. That's the plan anyway. And finally, one of the most exciting things that we have going on is the Link 21 program. And that is an effort to provide a new access point between San Francisco and the East Bay. Right now, the effort is being led by BART and Capital Corridor in partnership, and they're evaluating the different technologies, whether it be BART technology or rail technology, heavy rail technology, like our service for that crossing. That's going to be evaluated this year. And then thereafter, we would talk about working on this long-term program to support rail expansion, whatever the technology, as the mega region grows and we grow with the travel needs in the years ahead. Next slide. Well, I'm going to hand it back to Priscilla, who's an expert in our marketing communications effort. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Jim. Before I move on to marketing communications, I'm going to go back one slide really quick to see if Camille Tsao, who's our Link 21 manager if she wanted to add anything to what Jim had mentioned about the program.
I mean, I think Jim covered the program, fine, just at a high level. I'll be here to answer questions if anyone has any questions during the Q&A. So thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Camille. Moving on, we move back to marketing communications slide. There we go. As Rob had mentioned early on, ridership growth is obviously the priority for the marketing communications customer experience team. We'll be working on a variety of advertising campaigns, as well as working with some researchers to uncover sort of the whys behind our slow buildup of the ridership, once again bouncing back from the pandemic. So we'll be working with them. Also reinvigorating a lot of our promotional partnerships that we enjoyed prior to the pandemic. So we've been slowly working on building those up and continuing with our special event marketing. As well, we want to make sure that our customers stay happy. So we put a priority on customer engagement and satisfaction. And as Jim mentioned earlier with CalPIDS and GTFS, we're going to be looking at enhancing and sort of updating how we deliver our service advisory communications to our riders so that you can make better decisions about your travel. With the GTFS real time, that gives us some new opportunities of looking at how we can deliver that to you. So we're hoping to bring more streamlined and better communication to you in the coming year, as well as maintaining our presence on social media channels and creating content for people, and hoping to engage them in conversation about how the service is doing, and making sure that other people see it as well who may not know about us yet. Let's see, and we will also seek out opportunities to just enhance, increase our amenities. As Jim mentioned, we have the Wi-Fi with the movies, and we also have food service, and we're trying to put in some new specials and new items. So we always look for suggestions and items that you might want to purchase on the cafe car. We do entertain suggestions, so happy to accommodate that. And lastly, with regard to public relations and outreach, we also are seeking to earn a lot of positive media coverage for Capital Corridor and the work that we do overall for our service, so that we can maintain visibility within the public eye and amongst our industry peers, as well as we'll be working with other agencies on just raising awareness of rail related issues, especially with regard to rail safety and other initiatives as we go on through the years, looking ahead as we plan for our services to grow. And the PR group here will always be looking at creating content to feature the projects that we're working on, such as South Bay Connect and Link 21 and many of the other things, important work that we do. So look for that as well. That concludes our slides for today. I wanted to move into how you can submit comments on our public workshop business plan draft. You can do that at the workshop that you're attending right now. If you want to give some further thought to your questions, you can also send us a question via our online form, which is on our website at capitalcorridor.org/business plan. There's a link there. You can send us a note or a voicemail as well. The deadline for this is Friday, February 2nd. And we will then take all of those and incorporate them into the draft, and along with answers and responses to them, to the questions. And we look forward to hearing from you on all of these on our business plan. Next, I've got, this is our time to entertain your questions and respond to, give us your responses. I'm going to take, let's see, we've got Mike Barnbaum has a question. It says here, when a service reliability project is completed, does that necessarily result in schedule changes while maintaining the post schedule that is often mentioned in scheduling 101? I'm going to move that to Rob to answer.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. And we do have lots of service reliability projects. A lot of those involve things like as Jim mentioned, signal replacement. We also may have an interlocking replacement or upgrade that connects two tracks. We're even looking at a new siding down in Santa Clara area, 2,500-foot siding, which is a new track adjacent to the main line. And in all of those cases, the benefit is going to be reliability. And we don't necessarily have to change a schedule when we do that. But in some cases, it may let us change a schedule that we've wanted to change. So in our territory, we have some sections that are only single track territory. We have a really long stretch down south. I think it's 14 miles. And that means trains can only pass in certain locations. When you add something like an interlocking or a new siding, that actually gives us more flexibility in how we schedule trains. So we're trying to really carefully look at that. We want to make capital investments that do a couple of things. One is that they take things like really, really old signals, right? We have really old signals near Davis Station. We're funding that together with UP. We're going to replace those. And that means we're not going to have the nuisance delays that you sometimes have when there's something that happens with something that's old. It hasn't been overhauled in a long time. So that's one thing. But then these other smallish projects may let us do some things with our schedule that we're really unable to do under the current setup. So we're looking at all sorts of things like that in terms of investments.
Great, thank you, Rob. Let's see, then another question has come in from Michael. How much closer is Capital Corridor and San Joaquin to a full agreement with AC Transit Line F to allow open ticketing to San Francisco?
So another good question. So I'm going to, just for the benefit of anybody on the phone who maybe isn't familiar with this service, we have a connecting bus service from Emeryville that goes into San Francisco. So if you're taking a train, say from Sacramento or Davis or somewhere, and you get off at Emeryville, you connect to a bus if you buy that as part of your ticket with San Francisco as your final destination. That bus service is currently provided by a third-party private contractor. That's something where we go to bid and we get bidders and they provide that service. It is a very expensive service. And in fact, over the course of the pandemic, the delivery cost of that service is up 80%. And so we have not returned all of the buses that we had pre-pandemic to that connection. And we think that long-term, the answer is an open door service. And what that means is that you can take that service, whether you're a Capital Corridor rider or you're just riding that bus connection. And we're not just looking at line F, which is a specific line that AC Transit currently runs, but we're also looking at the possibility of a new service between Emeryville and AC Transit. AC Transit, as part of an agreement they have through one of a fund that they received, is expected to eventually provide that service, and we are actively working with AC Transit. We're not close. I can't give you a timetable on when that's going to happen, but I am in regular contact with the general manager of AC Transit. I know that agency has been hit hard by some of the driver shortages, and it has made it difficult for them to add service at this point. But we have made a similar change with our service up to South Lake Tahoe. That is actually run now by the El Dorado Transit Company, which serves South Lake Tahoe. We jointly fund the connection between Sacramento and South Lake Tahoe. It is a far more efficient, from a funding standpoint, a far more efficient delivery mechanism, and it has hugely positive benefits to customers of those services. So it truly is a win-win opportunity, and we are going to make that work with AC Transit here. Look forward to doing that. We'll keep you posted on progress.
Great, thank you, Rob. Let's see. Another question had come in about a partnership that we used to have with the Raiders when they were still here and in Oakland, and whether or not we would be looking into something like that with the 49ers and Levi Stadium? And the answer is yes. We are looking at doing some kind of a more formal partnership with them, probably similar to what ACE is doing with Levi Stadium to promote service to the games. As you know, ridership to these events is really have proved to be important for our overall ridership levels on those days, because it's all incremental ridership when we have a big event such as a Taylor Swift or Beyonce coming, or a fabulous 49ers team, of course, too. And having them in the playoffs is definitely a benefit for us. So it's been very important for us to make sure that we lean into attracting the leisure riders for these events, and continue to do that, and hopefully serve even more as we go forward and prepare for Super Bowl, which will be in 2026. Let's see. Next question we've got here is, will the ETA signs be similar to Caltrain's or more like what is currently installed for Kepler Corridor?
I think I can try to answer that. The answer is we don't know at this point in time. We've looked at them. The technology has certainly improved since, those signs were installed in the early 2000s. So the brightness and the clarity on them will be improved. So it will be modernized, and that's about the best I can say. But I'm not sure that it will be like Caltrain's.
Okay, thank you. That's a good question. Let's see. Another question that's come in is, can we get the same kind of anime marketing that BART has been doing in recent times? It's funny that you mentioned that. And one of the things that we are looking at is potentially updating our Cappy character that we have, and looking at doing some other things with with Cappy's personality, if you will. So stay tuned. We're hoping to do something like that within the next year, potentially. But thank you for the question. Okay, and I see another question is come in about the proposed bus change between Stockton. This is a connecting bus between Stockton, Sacramento, Chico, and Redding. Is there a specific question with regard to this, or maybe it's mention about this? I don't think that there's an actual question to this, but did anyone want to comment? Rob, did you want to comment on that bus change?
Yeah, Mike Birnbaum just put in the comments that another change on the rise between Stockton, Sacramento, Chico, and Redding. And my understanding is that the San Joaquin's, which is our sister agency, is also taken an opportunity to partner with some local transit agencies to provide jointly funded bus services. So this is something that I'll mention. We were not allowed to do this until a legislative change was made about 3 or 4 years ago. We were actually only allowed to provide bus service to people who also bought a rail ticket. So it's very counter to a lot of what you're hearing these days about, hey, let's all work together in the region to provide service. And we did have a legislative change, so we are now working with partner agencies on this, and San Joaquin's are a big part of that. I'll let you answer the ugly sweater question.
Sure. Yes, the ugly Kepler Corridor sweaters. I don't know if we'll bring exactly ugly Kepler Corridor sweaters for the holidays, but we are looking at hopefully expanding our offerings on rail goods. As you know, BART has a much bigger team than we do, and our team has been really focused on sort of staffing up, because we've had some openings this past year that have now been filled, and as well, we've been working a lot on Tap to Ride and sort of the implementation of Tap to Ride, and it's the recruitment and registration and customer support with regard to that whole program. So that's been definitely a big lift for us. to do. But we do hope to offer more rail goods offerings in the future. So thank you for that question.
And I'll answer in a lighthearted way, which is that we love all the stuff we learn from Mark, and they are our host agency, and we have really a tremendous amount of appreciation for all the support they provide to Capital Corridor. And we don't want to steal all their great ideas. So we learn a lot. We do a lot of things together. I've got my own Bart ugly sweater, so look forward to wearing that next Christmas.
I will add that that was a request in the other workshop I was on the train, was to get a sweater. So that is quickly becoming one of our more popular items. Maybe we'll think about it.
Absolutely noted. And I see another comment has come in about seeing if we can get Capital Corridor merchandise in the Railroad Museum near the station. We will look into that. I think that once we do more merchandise, then we can see if that's a possibility as well. So thank you for that suggestion. And Michael Barnum has another comment here. What Rob is referring to is SB 742. Open ticketing is the way to go. RABA out of Reading will likely provide the service mentioned earlier, assuming that it passes on the agenda tomorrow in Sacramento. Okay, thank you very much for that information, Michael. Let's see, I don't know if we have any other questions. Please feel free, if you have any other questions, to type them out in the chat. If you do not, we will conclude. Oh, here we go. Another question. Will there be any extension to Salinas?
Jim, you want to take that?
Sure. There will be an extension to Salinas in the works for some train service. Right now, it might initially be with a Caltrain service. In the future, there's talk with some funds and interest at the federal level to really build out the capital programs for expanding services within all states, and California is no different. There are things, it's called the Corridor ID program. So we are, in our Corridor ID program support, charged with looking at extending service to Salinas. So in the immediate term, it might be Caltrain, but in the future, it might be ourselves. But there's also a Corridor ID for the coast who would maybe join up with us, or we'd meet with them at Salinas. So lots of questions to be answered. But one of the things that we do when we consider these things is we have to look at the rail capacity, the rights that we have to operate in certain time slots. And right now, even though we serve down to San Jose, we couldn't make a convenient, effective time slot extend to Salinas and still serve the market that we already have today. So we'll have to get more rolling stock and also permission and capital projects in the years ahead to accomplish that. Want me to?
Yes,
work
we
on
have
the
another
next
question. When does Tap to Ride move out of testing phase? And is there any possibility for this to be adopted for Amtrak service nationwide?
I think I'll answer that. I am not going to answer for Amtrak nationwide, but they are supporting us and are looking over our shoulder as we launch Tap to Ride in a pilot phase. We have a long way to go. We do intend to support it moving ahead. And as I said, it's being installed in other cars that will show up. They're starting to be out there today. So we're moving in that direction. We think the transit industry needs to move in that direction. So we wanted to be ready with the learnings that we had in terms of inspecting that you tapped in and making sure you tapped out and all the customer service things. So we will hand off that knowledge to Amtrak and see if they are interested in it. But I think they can see some writing on the wall too, and are curious, and we'll see what they do with that.
Great, thank you, Jim. I don't see any more open questions, so I'm going to go ahead and move into our next slide. If you do have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us on our website with the business plan form. We have a special link that allows you to submit questions or comments about the business plan. As always, we want you to stay connected with us, and please follow us on social media, or visit us on our website to see more information about Capital Corridor. We want to thank you for the time that you spent with us today and invite you to stay engaged with us. And we look forward to responding to any other questions you may have and seeing you on board. Thank
Thanks,
you,
everybody,
all of our
for joining.
panelists. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
thanks. Bye-bye.